Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. I hope everyone's doing well. Let's give ourselves a second before we begin this live stream. Yeah, that's relatively quick. We're live now. Perfect. Again, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in late. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a couple of changes last minute, really. Tight schedule. So I decided to still have a live stream tonight, although I published a couple of videos earlier on. And I have another video actually coming out later on. Quite short videos, to be fair. But the live stream is obviously to stay in touch with you and talk at length, because it's still important. So I appreciate your understanding. And welcome, everyone. Greeting. What I wanted to talk to you about in this video, you're not late, KR. No one is late. You're all early. I'm the one who's late. So obviously the other videos, you can go ahead and check them out. One of them is with regards to Europe, really. The other one, an example of how things can be done and achieved peacefully through talking and understanding, and organizations and governments and universities listening to the people. And I'm going to have another video later on. But what I wanted to talk to you about in this video is obviously the negotiations. We have to talk about the live important stuff from Gaza, and I wanted to share with you the latest from what's happening. So before I get into it, we have Hamas almost agreed on the latest Israeli proposal. They didn't say they did, but there were reports that they did. It's not the first time that we're very close to a ceasefire deal agreed upon by the majority in the Israeli political and military leadership. It happened over a month ago, 2 months ago. Some people have been saying from months ago as well, some that weren't reported. Over a month ago, it led to massive protests, and we're having the same thing again. Almost a deal, but no deal. Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday said, "I'm committed to get our prisoners back, dead or alive." Imagine the disregard for the lives of the Israeli people. I told you it's all a lie. The fact that they care about the Palestinian people, the Israeli people, they killed them. They killed their own people on the 7th of October. They massacred them, and they killed over 80 prisoners in Gaza through their barbaric genocide. Obviously, some people in the Israeli society know that. As a matter of fact, most of them do. Don't get me wrong, genocidal or not genocidal. They might disagree with him on how we committed genocide and when, but they disagree with Netanyahu. Obviously, I have another part that's against the genocide. So the Israeli streets are exploding in protests. Why? Apparently, Benjamin Netanyahu has done another U-turn in the last minute. And the people are outraged by that, especially after Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security, sent a message. What was his message? And then the details, and obviously I'll open up the space for you. I won't be too long. And then I'll open the space up for you. So Netanyahu didn't go ahead with the deal. Let's clarify that, although there's something very close. Remember, previously he prevented the delegation from going. He banned the head of the Mossad from speaking with other people. Now he's preventing them from going to Cairo. They were due to go to Cairo just to finalize the deal. Whenever there's some sort of finalization, Netanyahu does a step. And the delegation said that before, by the way. They said, we receive orders in the morning and different orders in the evening. Whenever we're about to close the deal, Benjamin Netanyahu comes up with something more difficult to make it impossible. Now he's done the same thing. But before I elaborate on the details, I would like to tell you what Ben-Gvir said, the Minister of National Security. So what did he say? He said that I congratulate the Prime Minister for not sending a delegation. Another message, end talks and enter Rafah now. 3, I hope Netanyahu delivers on his promise to me last week, and he knows very well the consequences. He knows very well the consequences that will happen if he doesn't. Someone holding someone by the... Okay. So what happened? That's the question. Okay, here are the details. And then I'll obviously open for you participate, and I'll address your comments and questions. And if you wouldn't mind, just remind you, if anyone has questions, sometimes I miss them, just highlight them with a sign or tag my name so I can address them. So we had a report in one of the most important and leading Israeli newspaper website saying Netanyahu did not coordinate with Gantz and Eisenkot to cancel the delegation to Cairo. Non-binding. These are the people he needs to coordinate with. Cabinet. He wouldn't have had a cabinet without these two people. But he's not involving them in what's happening. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not share with the members of the war cabinet, ministers Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot, the decision not to send an Israeli delegation to the negotiations in Cairo until Hamas received a response indicating progress. On the other hand, ministers Yoav Gallant and Ron Dermer did participate in this decision, which is a ratification of Thursday's war cabinet decision, which included Gantz and Eisenkot, but was made before the developments. Nonsense, they need to involve them. It's just an excuse to try and undermine how important it is. Mind you, I'm quoting Israeli media here, don't forget. Ultra-pathological liars. Remember. Referring to this on Saturday evening, the Prime Minister's office said that Netanyahu is conducting regular and routine cuts with the heads of the defense establishment. According to the Bureau, unlike the war cabinet, which meets frequently, cutting a situation does not require summoning cabinet ministers. Throughout the Sabbath, Netanyahu issued two unusual announcements under the pseudonym political source. Right? He doesn't want to say, he'll say a political source said, but the Israelis know that. Even the Israelis know that by now. In which he called Arab reports of progress in contacts with Hamas. At first, the Arab media reported this morning that Hamas agreed to the clauses of Egypt's proposal. Hamas showing leniency, ladies and gentlemen. But shortly thereafter, and against the backdrop of additional reports that the United States had given guarantees for the cessation of the war and the IDF's withdrawal from Gaza, Netanyahu clarified in a statement issued on his behalf that under no circumstances will Israel agree to the end of the war as part of an agreement to release our abductees. As decided by the political echelon, the IDF will enter Rafah and destroy the remaining Hamas battalions there, whether or not there is a temporary pause for the release of our abductees. The timing of this announcement, in the midst of the negotiations for a deal, was strongly criticized by opposition members as well as Minister Gantz. What did Gantz say? Obviously, it was cited. No official response to the outline has yet been received. When it is accepted, the War Management Cabinet will convene and discuss it. War Cabinet will discuss it. Until then, I suggest that the political elements and all decision makers wait for official updates, act calmly, and not get hysterical due to political considerations, digging at Netanyahu. A few hours later, Netanyahu chose to issue another statement. On the Sabbath, by the way. They usually don't release statements on the Sabbath. Is it a dig at the ultra-Orthodox community saying, look, if you don't come and I'll start doing things on the Sabbath? That's why he probably said a source and not Netanyahu, but then still a dig. At around 7 p.m., he said, the reports that Israel agreed to end the war as part of a hostage deal, or that Israel will allow guarantees from mediators to end the war, to end the war, one second, to end the war as part of a hostage deal, or that Israel will allow guarantees from mediators to end the war are incorrect, he said. Until this moment, Hamas has not given up its demand to end the war, thus thwarting the possibilities of reaching an agreement. Well, obviously, what do you want Hamas to give you an open check? Oh yeah, you can come back to the war. Hamas want an agreement where the people of Gaza won't be worried about the next minute being bombed with a 1-ton bomb that'll kill 400, 500, 600 people at once, like you did in many cases. Like you did in Al-Ma'madan, a Christian hospital that belongs to the Church of England, by the way. 600 people in one go, JDAM. They don't want that. Hamas. What are you thinking exactly? So he's saying that basically Hamas is being unrealistic. End the war. They didn't give up the demand. On the other hand, obviously you have mass protests. Yair Lapid's criticizing him. He was in the protests. They call it the hostage square now in Israel. He said there is no such thing as a victory without a deal and the return of the hostages. Mind you, the terminology is reserved to them, not me. Instead of all the ridiculous announcement by political source, Netanyahu should send the negotiation team to Cairo tonight and say you are not returning without to deal with the hostages. Nothing else that needs to be done. Yesh Atid, that's the name of his party, promised, and we are clean. We will provide full safety net for the fulfilled deal, hinting that they'll give them a safety net. The deal, a safety net from the government. On the other hand, Smotrich, you know Smotrich by now, he said the Israeli government has only one mandate. One mandate. A surrender deal would end the war. Without a total victory, it would be a disaster. Rafah now. Rafah now. This is what he's saying, Smotrich. Only one mandate. Destroy them. Kill all of them. He's the one who criticized Egypt for not opening the borders and getting the Palestinians, saying that they participated, they contributed, they have responsibility for the 7th of October attacks. And Bibi is listening. Bibi is listening to them. After Netanyahu's two unusual announcements, the headquarters of the families of the abductees announced that it intended to issue an emergency declaration. They said, following the announcements of the Prime Minister, who is hiding under a senior political source, according to which Israel will not agree to end the war in exchange for a deal that will return all hostages. This is the 211th day that our families are in captivity in the hell of Gaza. There is a deal on the table that Hamas has signaled that it agrees to. But Netanyahu, after the signal, initiates another move to torpedo the deal by announcing twice while hiding under the senior political source. They know him. They know him by now. And they know that Hamas was... Let's not forget before we quote these people. Let me just remind you before I continue. Nothing could have happened. Obviously, nothing could have happened if we had equality, right? But forget about that. That's a deeper thing. But let's say with the 7th of October. What did Hamas tell them on the day? We're willing to begin negotiations immediately and stop this and have a prisoner exchange from day one. We're willing to end it. Hamas told them from day one. Now, if I was a reasonable person leading Israel, I would say, yeah, sure. And then I'll worry about Hamas later. First thing is, let me get my people back, as if I care about my people. He doesn't care about his people. And then we'll see what we can do with Hamas. He chose the other option. Genocide, revenge against the people, punish the people and not the people who committed the act against Israel, because he cannot beat them, he cannot defeat them, and express Israel's genocidal satanic nature to the whole world. He did us a favor. He did us a favor by exposing himself that badly. I said it before, what Israel's done, this genocide that they've committed, has done to Palestine what no one else did in history. They woke the whole world up. No one would have dreamt about this. No one. Obviously started with Al-Aqsa flood. But Israel's response was the biggest and quickest suicide. Instead of having other countries' sympathy with them, getting their people back and then saying, oh, look, these baddies, what they've done, we need to punish them, and having more potential backing. Obviously not committed genocide, but hey, that's Israel for you. Then they continued in the statement with other family members of the abductees. And please send this statement to mainstream media and everyone acting like they care. Netanyahu is once again trying to torpedo the only chance that the abductees should be saved. This is the Prime Minister's crime against his citizens. This is the Prime Minister's crime against his citizens. Who's saying that? The Israeli people. Families of who? Those who are kidnapped in Gaza. They're saying that. The people of Israel want the abductees back home and are willing to pay the price. They want them home and are willing to pay the price. But Netanyahu prefers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich to saving lives. On Netanyahu's repeated promises to operate in Rafah, said, same woman, on behalf of the families of the abductees, said, if the way to return the hostages is through an agreement to end the war, then we must end the war and bring them home. To Gantz and Isaacot, we say, don't let Netanyahu torpedo the deal. If you do not stop Netanyahu's attempts to torpedo, you are complicit in the crime of abandonment. We will deal with threats later. First of all, saving lives, and now. Makes sense. I mean, first of all, saving lives, if you care about your people's life, and then deal with Hamas. We are a step away from a deal, and our Prime Minister, an unnamed political source, is briefing against it. Prime Minister, aren't you ashamed? You abandoned and diverted against us, and now you are against the deal. Danny Elgart, brother of kidnapped Itzik Elgart, he also said, we are going to fight the Prime Minister. Bibi, we call on you from here to announce the cessation of the war and the return of all the hostages. The war is actually over. We know it's over. You won't work on us, as in you won't fool us. You take time to please Ben-Gvir. You take time to stay in power. You don't care about the 133 abductees. He should have added, you don't care about anyone in Israel but yourself. You don't care about the abductees, about anyone, about the army, anyone. And it doesn't matter how genocidal they are. Elgart also referred to the commitment to operate in Rafah, saying it would result in a death sentence for the abductees. He added, tomorrow the State of Israel marks the eve of the Holocaust Remembrance Day. We will all bow our heads to the tragedy of the Jewish people. We will all understand that since the Holocaust, the individual Holocaust of each of us happened to us. The abductees in Gaza know exactly what it means to go through a Holocaust. They are in the Holocaust. We will settle accounts with anyone who was responsible for the greatest failure in the history of the state. You see, he's missing one thing here. It's the Gazan people going through the Holocaust. It's the Gazan people going through the Holocaust of the 21st century. and your prime minister is fooling you in the name of Judaism. Wake the hell up. They continued in this article. This week, it was reported that Netanyahu had asked the families of the abductees to act against the issuance of orders against senior officials of the criminal court in The Hague. Look at that. He's asking the people of the abductees to save him from the criminal court. Cheeky Bibi. They told him, Bibi, are you asking us to protect you from the prosecutor general in The Hague? What exactly will we protect you with? We will protect you as you protected us. So we're not protecting you. Go to prison. That's what the Israelis are telling Benjamin Netanyahu. And then they continued. Families of abductees, on behalf of the Tikva Forum, they wrote a strong letter to the Prime Minister saying, if you cannot withstand the pressure and order the IDF to win, please stand up and resign. They demanded, this is the other side, right? They demanded an Operation Rafah, which they claim will exert heavy pressure on Hamas and help release all of the abductees, not just a limited number. According to them, not entering Rafah means giving up the goals of the war. Look at the split. The letter stated, the release of the abductees now and the defeat of Hamas are the supreme goals of which the IDF was established. And they are the goals of war, as you have stated many times. Any halt in the war these days is sinful to the purposes of war. The State of Israel was established after 2,000 years of exile to protect the Jewish people from events that occurred during your tenure. If you are unable to prevent a repeat of such events, please allow the people of Israel to choose others to fulfill that goal. As if he will. He's trying to play on every side, this man. They continued in this article, the last couple of bits, and then I'll open the space up for you. In the afternoon, other political sources clarified that at this stage there would be no Israeli delegation to Cairo. No Israeli delegation to Cairo. And who's in Cairo? CIA Director William Burns and a Hamas delegation. They're there waiting for Israel. According to them, a professional level delegation is supposed to leave if there is an answer from Hamas that has a horizon for negotiations and progress. The delegation is ready to leave and has been given a mandate to advance the deal. Israel hopes the answer will come today night or tomorrow morning. During the past 2 days, Egyptian sources were quoted on various Arab channels as saying that progress has been made in the negotiations, that Cairo had reached a satisfactory formula presented to both sides, and that Hamas accepted it in principle. Remember when we spoke about the head of the Egyptian intelligence taking the lead? And it was one of the first or the most significant times where Egypt actually came up with a proposal in which it felt like it could please both sides. Clearly, it worked to an extent, but even with this offer, it's not working that much. As the discourse about military action Rafah intensified, Egypt, which fears such activity, is stepping up its efforts to reach a deal and creating a positive discourse around the negotiations. Today, as noted, there were Arab reports that Hamas had waived the terms of the permanent ceasefire in the first phase of the ceasefire, while providing guarantees from the mediators. That's another leniency move from Hamas, according to the reports that they're quoting. In fact, according to these reports, that they call them the terrorists, excuse me. It's like blasphemy calling Hamas terror, excuse me. But this is the report, again, that's Israel calling them that, it's not me. We know exactly who the terrorist is. Agrees to embark on the first phase of the deal, which includes the release of 33 abductees, and to discuss later on the details of the second stage, which includes the release of the remaining abductees and a permanent ceasefire, to which Israel still refuses. And they ended by detailing the Egyptian proposal. They said this week the Hezbollah affiliated newspaper Al-Akhbar published the text of Egypt's proposal to Hamas. According to the proposal, in the first stage, which will last 40 days, there will be a temporary ceasefire between the sides, and the IDF will withdraw eastward from densely populated areas in the Gaza Strip to an area close to the Israeli border in the entire Gaza Strip, except for the Gaza Valley. In addition, it was reported that flights over the Gaza Strip would be suspended for 8 hours a day and 10 hours on days of release of the abductees. There will also be an increase in the entry of humanitarian aid and fuel in the Gaza Strip. It was also reported that Hamas would release at least 33 live abductees, including women, children under the age of 19, adults over the age of 50, sick and wounded. In return, Israel would release 20 Palestinian prisoners under the age of 19 for every abductee released. Based on lists provided by Hamas, for every abductee over the age of 50 or injured will be released. For every abductee over the age of 50, 20 Palestinian prisoners over the age of 50 or injured will be released in exchange, provided that the remainder of their sentence does not exceed 10 years. Very specific. For every soldier released, 40 Palestinian prisoners will be released, 20 of them with life sentences, and 20 serving sentences of more than 10 years. Now, Hamas will most likely send them a list with these people, and Israel will name them because they're all approved by Hamas and to Israel. And by the way, Hamas will not give out the names up until the late stage. They don't give names of the people they'll release. In the second stage, these are the last two paragraphs, and then I'll come to you, which will last 42 days. The necessary arrangements will be completed to restore lasting quiet in the Gaza Strip, and the declaration of its entry into force before the beginning of a prisoner exchange between the sides, with Israel receiving all the serving male abductees, civilians and soldiers over the age of 19, and in fact all of the remaining abductees, in exchange for an agreed number of Palestinian prisoners, as well as a full withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. In the third stage, which will also last for 42 days, according to the report, the bodies of Israelis in the Gaza Strip will be exchanged for those of Palestinians after identification. In addition, a 5-year reconstruction program will begin, which will include the construction of homes, civilian facilities, and infrastructure. It ended there. In the meantime, Tzahi Hanegbi, an Israeli official, he said, we have 2 divisions outside of Gaza waiting. Outside, next to Rafah. These are the same places that Hamas attacked. Al-Qassam brigades attacked them, a preemptive strike. Telling Israel, oh, you don't even keep them waiting. Right? And they're still heavily attacking all of the Israeli forces in the Netzarim line, which splits the northern part of Gaza from the southern part, where the minority of Israeli forces remain now, the majority of them. But it's hell for them, even there. And that was the conclusion, really, that Benjamin Netanyahu is still abiding by Itamar Ben-Gvir against the will of everyone, against the will of the Israelis, against the will of everyone, let alone the Palestinians, the US, their closest ally, against the will of everyone, and he's being enabled. Now, part of this arrogance, by the way, this massive arrogance is due to the enablement of Benjamin Netanyahu from the United States, from his European allies, because if he wasn't enabled, he wouldn't have gone this far. If 1% of what Israel committed in Gaza, hell, if 0.1% from what Israel committed in Gaza happened in any country that the United States doesn't like, you would have done for a day. But when it's Israel committing a genocide, doesn't matter how much they kill, it's fine. They're defending themselves. Collateral damage. 17,000 children. Collateral damage. No problem. And that's what I want to share with you now. I'll go to your comments and questions if you have any, obviously. Gamin Brioche, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Thank you so much for your super thanks. You said no audio. I hope everyone can hear me well. It looks like you might have had a problem with your audio, potentially. Have a look. Lucas Brown. Lucas Brown. Let me see what you said, Lucas Brown. Where did it go? It disappeared. You said something about the US putting pressure on Qatar. Some messages disappear. Okay. You said something about the US putting pressure on Qatar to put pressure on Hamas, I assume. Listen, the United States, they need Qatar. And the United States, they agreed on the Hamas offices in Qatar. Israel wants Qatar. It's just that Netanyahu is causing frictions and problems. Benjamin Netanyahu wants to make it more difficult. He thought that by having a massive campaign against Qatar, by the way, previously, that he would put pressure on them to put pressure on Hamas. He thought he could play around with them. It backlashed. They started spreading in Israel all of a sudden, oh, Qatar supports terror. You lying hypocrite. You've been dealing with Qatar for so long. All of the hundreds of millions went into Gaza in cash were by your approval. It was Hamas there. You agreed on it. The Israeli government, Bibi Netanyahu. So it was an attempt. And also, let's not forget, they understand how important the role of Qatar is because the Hamas offices are there. And by damaging the role of Qatar, Bibi Netanyahu would achieve something he wants to achieve, which is a delay. He wants to delay as much as possible, make it impossible to reach a solution, right? And listen, the US understands that. Doesn't matter how vile the US government is, how much worse than Israel they are. The US administration, they know Netanyahu. You see, their problem is that Netanyahu and his government put Israel in such a bad situation and tarnished their image. They're already tarnished image, really, but it took it to the next level. They're upset with him, but they know what he's about. That's why when you had that escalation with Iran, he gave him a cold shoulder immediately, Biden. He knew he wanted to drag him to an all-out war in the Middle East, because an all-out war in the Middle East would take away the attention from the genocide in Gaza and from Bibi Netanyahu's position. He can maybe have some mass murders here and there and say, oh, look, that's happening over there. Leave me to it. And he thought he'll put the US, and there's going to be a regional coalition, and Maybe that would even put more pressure on Egypt because you would have the US military siding with Israel. That's Netanyahu's delusions. But the US is aware of it. And the US already said there is no giving up the role of Qatar. That doesn't mean Qatar is willing to accept all of the nonsense 24/7 from them. Said, oh, we can take a step back if you continue like that. They're entitled to. Because if you are mediating and you're being disrespected to such a level, we're not going to do your dirty work for you. Sasha Safari saying Blinken gave an interview in China saying we are waiting for Hamas to take the deal. What happens if Israel doesn't show up to a deal meeting? Your thoughts? Yeah, he even said more than that. He said now the ball is in Hamas' court. They need to accept the deal. Who are you? Who are you? Put that pressure on Israel, you hypocrite. They're the genocidal state. Go take your armies to Israel. Stop with genocide. Telling me put pressure on Hamas. For what? For defending the Palestinian people? But clearly there's been some sort of development. If Israel doesn't show up, they will show up again later on. It will be an act from Netanyahu saying, oh, look, we didn't show up. Look, if you don't want to give in, we won't show up. But he wouldn't not show up repeatedly. By the way, a big part of Netanyahu sending his delegation is a show. Let's not forget that. And it was published previously that he's only sending this delegation just to talk and stretch time to show that I am talking. Okay, if you're sending a delegation to supposedly reach a deal, why are you making it impossible for them to reach a deal? Why are you ordering them? It's an explicit order from Netanyahu for the delegation. You can never approve a deal. What does that mean? That means he doesn't want a deal. He said previously, they don't know Hamas, I know them. The head of the Mossad doesn't know Hamas. The head of the Shin Bet doesn't know Hamas. No one knows Hamas but Netanyahu. He's obsessed with himself, as if he knows how. Only him. So they will show up at a later stage. It happened previously. They acted like, but then they'll have to show. But that's all being enabled. Again, let's not be delusional. That's all being enabled. This attitude of Israel, it's being enabled by the US, by European countries supporting them, primarily the US, really, because Europe follows American orders, really. They're enabling them. I'm not sure when until when they're going to stretch it to, by the way. Up until everything explodes completely. What are you waiting for? Exactly. Ansarullah is asking, Mahmoud, why do the Brown University students believe the deal reached? Did they forget that they live in an empire of lies? Look, I think if you can reach a deal, that's in reference to a video I published about the deal that the Brown University reached with the students. Look, what is the purpose of protesting? You need to have a purpose. You can't just protest for demands. For example, stop the genocide, put pressure, stop supporting by arms, stop dealing, divest. Okay. They had a problem with the investments, with some sort of Israeli organizations. One of the main things. Their university, and by the way, there was another university. It's becoming more of a trend. Fine, listen, let's dismantle the encampment and we will have a vote. We will have a vote in October. You students, you can vote and say, and they agreed on it. Is their agreement wrong? Is their agreement right? That's a different subject. Is the date correct? Should it have been earlier? That's a different topic. But then that involves the people in the party. No one can impose on certain students what to have as, requests or demands from their university and how to deal with it. Because people protest and have requests based on their demands and their needs. Agree with them or disagree with them. But the core element of people communicating, someone listening, is good on its own. Did they put too much faith in them? Did they delay it for too long? Again, that's a different topic. And that obviously depends on the people leading the movement, who's negotiating on their behalf. And you need to consider if some people might be compromised. Not to kind of say, doubt anyone, obviously, but just to say. Because don't forget that some of the protests are infiltrated. Some of the movements are infiltrated. So you'll have some of people leading certain things are actually working for the other side. But no, not to cast doubt on anyone. Don't get me wrong here. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But you could have many theories when it comes to these things. Matej. There were talks about Hezbollah having tunnels into Israel. What do you think is the likelihood of seeing Hezbollah occupying northern Israel, and under what circumstances? Thank you. Love you, bro. Much love back. Listen, Hezbollah have tunnels to Israel. Tens of kilometers deep, very, very sophisticated, and complicated to build, really, because Hezbollah, they make the tunnels in stones. Like they dig the stones, they crack stones and make tunnels. Not like the sand in Gaza where you just dig. It's easier. So Hezbollah, heavy equipment. And with that, they have a network. They have wired communication systems. I mean, Gaza, Israel couldn't take their communication system, let alone Hezbollah. They can reach a stage where they invade the northern part of Israel and occupy some parts of it successfully. Why? I'll tell you why. Because number one, they do have tunnels. Number two, they have exceptionally good intelligence. I mean, Hamas and Gaza, they have good intelligence. Hezbollah have exceptional intelligence, and they target Israeli forces in residential places specifically. They'll send a drone and specifically target a flat room. Talk about targeted assassinations like the ones that Israel do. Hezbollah, even more sophisticated. So you have the capacity, you have the tunnels, you have the intel, they know the weak points, and they have the elite forces and the manpower. And they also enjoy the fact that the majority population in the northern part of Israel, in the Galilee region, is majority Arab Palestinian. And the environment of where you're operating is important if you want to invade. The less hostile the environment when you attack and occupy, the better it is for you. Then the bases, like the Israeli bases in the north, Hezbollah is like they have them under their thumb. How many times did they attack command bases in North Israel? Israel has 2 military air surveillance commands. One in Meron, Mount Meron, and one in the south, Mitzpe Ramon, it's called. 2, only 2. Hezbollah annihilated the one in the north. And Israel only has 2. And the one in the north is in charge on all, and the command is there. Obviously, they had to take measures, Israel. They conduct all of their operations that relate to the northeastern part of the Mediterranean and all of the countries surrounding that area. That means Syria, Lebanon, Turkey. West, northern part towards Israel, obviously, so it's technically east of the Mediterranean. Then it stretches to parts of North Iran, these areas. Mitzpe Ramon south. So Yemen, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, okay? If you target that place so heavily, and there were leaks about casualties, then imagine what you can do. Under which circumstances? I think under probably the final war scenario. Under the that's it, we're going to liberate Palestine scenario. Of it's just ending and this is the moment to get in because we want to stay there. Like Hezbollah, I don't think they'll conduct an operation similar to the 7th of October. Not to undermine what Hamas did. They had conducted a successful military campaign. They took down the Gaza division and recaptured territories where they were expelled from. Hezbollah would look at completely controlling and remaining there up until everything is liberated. So that's why it would take a last resort scenario for Hezbollah to do that. Unless they, and even that can be interpreted or included in an end of Israel scenario, strategically take parts bit by bit, control and move forward. But they will have weak points if they do that, because then Israel would know, okay, Hezbollah controls this place. I think they will conduct a very big operation where Israel will be overwhelmed. I mean, if Israel was overwhelmed by Hamas occupying a couple of areas surrounding, imagine Hezbollah reach all of the Galilee. It's big. It's very big. And now, I mean, you have 80, 90,000 people out of there. So in a way now is technically a good time for them. But I think they clarified in the beginning of this, of them entering Al-Aqsa flood on the 8th of October. Hassan Nasrallah, their Secretary General, he had a speech 1 month later, and in which he said this is not the final war. No one be delusional, this is not the final war. But it's part of. Now, did he say that to trick the Israelis? He plays psychological warfare with Israelis. I wouldn't be surprised. He tricks them a lot, and they get worried by him. But I think if as an all-out escalation where it's about to end, Hezbollah will enter the north and they will occupy it relatively easily. Look, Israel can't defend itself properly. It's a weak army, defeated nation, demoralized nation, a paper tiger. Mind over matter saying, hi, Mahmoud Pepe Escobar said Israel had a fighter jet on its way to Iran to detonate an EMP to disable electronics, but it was shot down by the Russians. What do you think is true or false? Look, there was just one report about that. And we had this notion that also they tried to nuke certain parts, Isfahan or what have you. I mean, I don't think Israel was planning anything big, to be fair, because they knew they were on their own. And they're cowards. They can't do anything without the support of Mother America, of the US administration. Israel wouldn't have committed this if it wasn't for the air bridge provided by the US with bombs, munition, everything that they need. Okay, that's with Gaza. Now, let alone being completely secluded when it comes to Iran. What are they going to do? They can't do anything with this. I personally don't think so. Look, it's obviously a likelihood, but to verify such a claim, you need quite substantial reports, and it needs to be confirmed by multiple sources, really. Show some evidence about it. Deb Smith is saying, was any Arab Muslim country responsible for the Holocaust? I don't think they were. I'm 64, white woman looking to educate myself. I have the best health from my children. Yeah, it's amazing to obviously keep an open mind at whatever age and learn from everyone. And no, as a matter of fact, the Muslim communities and the Jewish communities, they suffered together during the Spanish Inquisition. They were forced out of Spain together. Who gave them refuge? The Ottoman Empire. Jewish communities lived peacefully all across of the Arab and Muslim world for centuries. The people who were responsible for the Holocaust are European. They declared that we have a Jewish problem. Final question for the Jewish problem. Who provided them with the solution? Zionism. What did they do? They said, okay, we speak on behalf of Jewish people who want to give you a homeland. Come, let's all go to Israel and flee Europe. Problem solved. We don't have to kill you, just flee. Maybe that's why they're supporting them so much now, because they don't want them to get back. And that's why they say anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. And why do they say anti-Semitism? Because Zionism is an attempt that succeeded to an extent, not fully, to ethnicize the religion of Judaism. Judaism is a religion, it's not an ethnicity. They ethnicize Judaism, related it to a land. Then, anti-Semitism pops up. What does how do they define anti-Semitism? Criticism and, discrimination against the Jewish people. And Jewish people are linked to Israel now. So, you criticizing Israel means you see how flawed it is? All of it is a malicious attempt, linking everything to do with Israel to Judaism. Even the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, 7 of its 14 definitions relate to Israel as a state. It's like me defining Islamophobia, telling you the criticism of Saudi Arabia is Islamophobic. Or me defining anti-Christianity. If you criticize England or if you criticize any other Christian country, then you're anti-Christian. What kind of a ridiculous proposition is this? All of it is malicious. But no, of course not. No one was in charge. As a matter of fact, Zionism started to conduct terrorist activities in Arab states after their initial immigration to Palestine wasn't enough to give them a very high level of demographic superiority over the indigenous Palestinian people, even after they expelled them in 1948. So they needed more Jewish people. What do? They go to Arab states, conduct terrorist operations, scare the people of the Arab states, let them come to Israel. When they came to Israel, they go through an indoctrination and brainwashing procedure. They strip them of their Arab identity, strip them of their cultural identity, even though they're Arab, but they were Jewish, similar to how Jewish Arabs lived for centuries in Arab states. And they gave them Jewish names, and they started telling them, you are Jewish, you're not Arab, you're Jewish as an ethnicity. It's all a facade, it's all a lie. So Europe was in charge of the Holocaust, of course. But Europe, look, they talk about the Nazis. How many of them collaborated with them? How many were showing these signs? How many times did Zionism collaborate with Nazism? The Havara Agreement, that's just what's been published. Now imagine if there's so much manipulation and lies now and spinning in mainstream media in the 21st century, when you have social media and they can still brainwash some people, albeit the ones who are prone to be brainwashed. Imagine how it was 100 years ago. What would they do? They control the narrative and control everything. Abed saying, Israel just continues and decides to bomb Rafah anyway. I imagine you mean invade Rafah, not just bomb them, because they bomb them now. What do you think the response measures would be by everyone? An invasion in Rafah would probably lead to a massacre, a continuation and expansion of the genocide. It would lead to very, very fierce resistance, by the way. The resistance is prepared. Hamas, the PIJ, everyone is very well equipped in Rafah. Don't worry about that. It would create severe tensions that could potentially lead to cutting the ties and ending the peace treaty with Egypt. It could lead to a military clash with Egypt, albeit a limited one initially, but then you don't know how quickly things can spiral out of control. There's a reason why Egypt deployed over 100,000 troops and so much heavy equipment and conducted the biggest military exercises in the past few months. They're preparing for that day. It would worry the United States. Don't think they'll take direct action against Israel. They'll probably try and use a bit of leverage, similar to what they're using now. But I mean, they haven't prevented them from committing a genocide. And it could escalate to something bigger, especially if Egypt is involved. Like the Egyptian army, they can take down Israel if they wanted to, by the way. But they're playing it safe. And to them, declared before, when the day comes, if the day comes, obviously, you can see. Eileen Strange, do you think that the Israelis will show up ready to deal after they chase the people Rafah out into Sinai? I assume you mean the settlers. Look, there you have, the hill boys, hilltop boys, the radical settlers of the West Bank. They're already in around Gaza. They built mini settlements outside the wall. to understand the scale of it, you know. And that's what Israel's been doing all the time. The only good thing is now everything is public. What did they used to do before? Speak nicely, have a center left-leaning government, settlement establishment, committing crimes every single day, protected by who? By the same state that speaks nicely and put things under the carpet. Netanyahu and his government, they took out all of the Israeli waste and smeared it everywhere. That's who we are. Look. And they did everyone a favor by doing that, because that's what they were and have been always. They haven't showed a better side. They haven't shown a better side ever, Israel. So they will. They will. Well, why do you think Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are so keen? They want sea view. They don't have sea view in the West Bank. They want sea view settlements. They already have property plans and developments. I quoted this woman in charge of this settlement group. What's her name? Daniela something. Oh yeah, we will, and they will get out in their millions, and we will go back there. We're already selling plans and stuff. That's how they think, these people. So the plans are very real. Kate, will Abbas give up his throne, or will he give up his billions to be used to rebuild Gaza? No. He'll give up his throne when he's dead. Or I don't know, if he's hospitalized and on his way out. He gave them so much. He sugarcoated all of their crimes. He enabled them. They kill Palestinians in the West Bank. The other day, they killed a guy that Israel has been after for a few months, if not years. Killing on behalf of Israel. What type of leadership are we talking about? Like I said, these people are slaves. Slaves to the Zionists. Let's see if we have anything else before we wrap up. No. Okay. We'll finish it there then. Thanks again, everyone, so much for joining me. Ari Magus, thank you so much for your super thanks. Thank you for all of your contributions. Apologies if I've missed some of them, if they weren't highlighted or anything. But hopefully I'll be with you tomorrow. Check out my other videos if you haven't, by the way. A couple of short videos that I posted that are very important too. If you don't see my notification, I've posted 2 notifications quite late, so you might just see me in the night. Otherwise, sometimes I still post them earlier on, but check in. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. Thank you, everyone, again. Video. Take care.